Welcome to Night Lesson. Relax and learn along the way. Intro. The moon is unique. The moon is too large. It is too light. And it is positioned exactly at such a distance from the Earth that it covers the sun to the millimeter during a total solar eclipse, even though the sun is 400 times larger. No other planet in our solar system has a moon with such a ratio to its home planet. The probability that all of this is a coincidence still puzzles astronomers today. And yet, we simply call it the moon, as if it were a matter of course. These peculiarities are just the beginning. During seismic measurements conducted by Apollo astronauts, scientists discovered that the moon seemed to reverberate like a bell for minutes after an impact, a phenomenon that suggests a possibly hollow core. Photos of its surface show structures that appear so alien and regular that they spark the imagination. And what about the stories of the astronauts who saw things they were hesitant to talk about, or did not talk about at all, after their return? The abrupt cancellation of the Apollo program, after only 6 moon landings, remains unsatisfactorily explained to many today. In the silent vastness of space, right on our doorstep, lie hidden questions that have found no clear answers to this day. Chapter 1. The Birth of a Companion. Sometimes, when the night is deepest and the stars sparkle like diamonds on dark velvet, we forget that our gentle, luminous companion in the sky was once born from an act of unimaginable cosmic violence. Let us dive into that distant past, about 4.5 billion years ago, when the Earth was still a young, glowing planet, a world in constant motion, shaped by the angry eruptions of countless volcanoes spewing their molten secrets to the surface. It was a place of extreme heat and liquid rock, surrounded by a thick, boiling atmosphere. A planet in its earliest infancy, still far from the form we know today. It was in this chaotic yet fertile era of planetary formation that a Mars-sized protoplanet raced toward us from the deep black of the early solar system. Scientists have given it the name Theia, a reference to Greek mythology in which Theia was the titan and mother of the moon goddess Selene. But this approach was no peaceful encounter. It was a dance that ended in a catastrophe, a collision of sheer unimaginable force. Imagine 2 gigantic spheres, each a planet in its own right, colliding with an energy that shatters our human imagination. It was not a head-on impact that would have destroyed the Earth, but a sideways glancing blow, a cosmic accident that would seal the fate of both worlds forever. The released energy of this giant impact was so powerful that it not only tore Theia apart, but also stripped a significant portion of the Earth's mantle from our young planet. Gigantic amounts of glowing material, a mixture of Theia's remains and terrestrial rock, were hurled into space at incomprehensible speed. But they did not simply vanish into the reaches of the cosmos. Instead, they remained trapped in the Earth's gravitational field, forming a massive, rotating ring of molten rock, fiery dust, and countless pieces of debris. This ring of debris, a glowing band of liquid matter and exploding particles, orbited the young Earth like a gleaming halo, a breathtaking spectacle of light and heat, a fleeting precursor to our current moon. What happened next was a process of rapid accretion, the slow growing together through gravity, a cosmic construction that took place incredibly fast on a geological scale. Over a period that perhaps spanned only a few centuries or even millennia, a blink of an eye in the history of the universe, the countless particles and fragments in this fiery ring began to attract each other. Under their own gravity, they clumped together, collided more gently, merged, and grew steadily. From this glowing chaos, this shimmering cloud of debris, our moon was born. It was the product of a catastrophic, even brutal event that would ultimately play a vital role in the development of life on Earth. The newborn moon was a completely different sight at that time than the silent, silvery, celestial body we know today. It was located much closer to the Earth, perhaps only a fraction of today's distance. Its surface still glowed in a deep red, a world of molten rock that was slowly beginning to solidify. During this phase of differentiation, the separation according to weight, heavier elements sank into the center to form a core, while lighter materials rose to the surface and formed the first lunar crust. This is also the reason why rock samples brought to us by the Apollo missions show such amazing similarities in their isotope ratios with terrestrial rock, convincing evidence for the giant impact hypothesis and the shared birth of our two worlds from the same cosmic fire. In the silence of immeasurable time, the silent guardian that has accompanied us ever since was thus formed. Chapter 2. Two Faces, the Mystery of the Far Side. Sometimes the universe reveals its secrets only reluctantly, and for millennia, an entire face of our heavenly neighbor remained hidden from humanity. The Earth and its faithful companion are connected in an eternal dance, a cosmic ballet that results in the moon always showing us the same side. This phenomenon, known as tidal locking, is the result of subtle yet tireless tidal forces that our planet has exerted on the moon over billions of years. They have slowed its rotation and kept it trapped in this firm embrace. Thus, no human eye, no telescopic lens, could ever behold the hidden side, until October of the year 1959. At that time, the Soviet space probe Luna 3 sent the first, still blurry but historic photographs of this unknown territory back to Earth. What was revealed in these images was more than just a new perspective. It was a stunning revelation, a world that fundamentally differed from the familiar front side. When we look at the side facing us, we immediately recognize the vast, dark plains that have been known for centuries as Maria, the so-called seas. They are not bodies of water, but huge basins of solidified, dark lava created by massive impacts in the early, turbulent times of the moon and later filled with magma. They shape the gentle, familiar face that gazes at us every night. The far side, however, this region revealed so late, tells a completely different story. It is a mosaic of craters, a rugged landscape covered in scars that appears significantly rougher and much older. The Maria are hardly to be found here. Their absence is striking. This dramatic asymmetry raises a fundamental question: why these two so different faces? A key clue lies in the composition of the lunar crust. On the side facing away from Earth, the crust is significantly thicker, in some places up to 60 kilometers more massive than on the front side. Such a massive crust meant that even after the most devastating impacts, the underlying magma could not easily reach the surface and fill the impact basins with lava. But the deeper cause of this crustal thickness asymmetry, why one side is so much more robust than the other, remains a mystery that is not fully solved to this day and continues to fascinate researchers. The Grail mission in 2012, which mapped the moon's gravitational anomalies, precisely measured this asymmetry of the crust, ushering in a new era of lunar research dedicated to this phenomenon. In addition to the mysterious crustal distribution, the far side of the moon harbors another almost ghostly appearance: the so-called lunar swirls. These are bright, swirl-like structures on the lunar surface that stand out due to their unusual appearance, as they cannot be assigned to any visible crater or any known volcanic or tectonic activity. They float like delicate brushstrokes over the rough surface, and their most famous representative is Reiner Gamma, a glowing pattern without the usual impact crater at its center. The remarkable thing about these swirls is their correlation with local magnetic fields. Although the moon as a whole no longer possesses a global magnetic field today, such as the Earth has, these specific regions seem to have isolated, strong magnetic islands. The question of where these magnetic anomalies come from has not yet been finally clarified. A leading theory suggests they could be remnants of ancient impacts where ferromagnetic material was compressed or melted. Another hypothesis speculates that they are evidence of a once-active lunar core whose final magnetic pulse manifested in these crustal areas before it cooled. The truth, like so many secrets of our silent guardian, remains hidden in the dark, quite literally, on the side that still denies us most of its wonders and never ceases to amaze us. Chapter 3: The Creator of Life. How the Moon Made Earth Habitable. Let us consider for a moment the Earth as it existed unimaginable 3.8 billion years ago. A young planet, still without the green web of life that we know today. Its surface was characterized by warm, shallow coastal regions extending under a strange-looking sky. And there, majestic yet threateningly close, sat our moon. It was not the distant, modest companion we see in the night sky today. Back then, it orbited the Earth at perhaps one-third of today's distance, a glowing giant that occupied a large part of the firmament. This proximity gave it immense power, an invisible but omnipresent force that shaped our young planet with an iron hand, the tidal forces. Imagine how these forces turned the ocean into massive tsunamis twice a day, breaking over the extensive shallow coasts with irrepressible force. They flooded vast areas of land, only to retreat into the depths a short time later. But they did not just leave behind barren, wet surfaces. With every high and low tide, countless small ponds and puddles remained, filled with water and, more importantly, with an abundance of organic molecules washed up from the depths of the ocean. These temporary pools of water were no ordinary puddles. They were, as many scientists assume today, the most likely breeding grounds for life, the chemical laboratories of the early Earth. Here, in these isolated and constantly changing microcosms, the water evaporated under the intense sun, concentrating the dissolved amino acids and nucleotides and pressing them closer together. Under these conditions, in a cycle of wetting and drying, heat and cold, these fundamental building blocks of life could react with each other, combine, and form complex structures. It was a tireless series of nature's experiments lasting billions of years, until at some point, in one of these tiny, inconspicuous ponds, the first self-replicating molecule emerged, a tiny spark that was to ignite the fire of life. Without the unceasing pulse of the moon, without these repeating cycles of concentration and dilution in the tidal pools, the emergence of life on Earth as we know it would have been hardly conceivable. But the role of the moon went far beyond providing these chemical reactors. It also acted as a cosmic anchor, a massive brake that gradually slowed the rapid rotation of the young Earth. In its first billions of years, our planet rotated at a breathtaking speed. An Earth day back then was perhaps only 5 or 6 hours long, which would have led to unimaginable weather extremes. The moon's tidal forces, however, exerted steady resistance, a kind of sandpaper that slowed the Earth's rotation over eons. Further billions of years passed, and the days slowly lengthened until it reached the 24 hours we take for granted today. This slowing down was crucial. A slower rotation meant more stable atmospheric conditions, more moderate winds, fewer devastating storms, and a more balanced distribution of temperatures across the globe. Only on such a calmed and stable Earth could complex life emerge, thrive, and develop into the incredible diversity we admire today. It was as if the moon were taming its wild, young protege, shaping it in a way that made evolution possible in the first place. In return for this immeasurable gift, the moon is incessantly moving away from us. Every year, it drifts about 3.8 centimeters further into space, a tiny but measurable distance. In doing so, it steadily gives off energy that it once took from the rotating Earth. It is a silent, cosmic barter, in which the moon slowly withdraws, like a wise teacher releasing his student into the world, knowing that he can now stand on his own feet. This fascinating and unique exchange between Earth and Moon is more than just an astronomical phenomenon. It is the story of a deep, symbiotic relationship. No other known planet in our solar system possesses a moon of such a size ratio that has exerted such a profound and lasting influence on its development. The gravitational pull of the moon has not only shaped the tides of the oceans that wash over the coasts daily. Rather, it created the conditions that possibly created life itself on our blue planet. It is not just a silent companion, but a creator whose invisible work laid the foundation for everything we are today. Chapter 4: Guardian of the Axis, the Stability of Earth. The influence of our lunar companion, however, goes much further. Beyond the rhythmic tides that reshape the face of the coasts daily and the subtle slowing of the Earth's rotation, a deeper, quieter function unfolds that is of invaluable value for the survival of life on our planet. It is the moon's role as the tireless guardian of the Earth's axis, a cosmic task that keeps our climate stable and thus creates the conditions for the unfolding of complex life in the first place. An image comes to mind, like a majestic spinning top rotating in perfect balance, so the Earth presents itself, supported by the presence of its satellite. Without it, as celestial mechanics teaches us, our planet would glide through space like a wobbling top, losing its axis in unpredictable fluctuations. We live on a planet whose tilt, the so-called obliquity, significantly shapes the diversity of our seasons. Currently, this tilt of the Earth's rotational axis to the plane of its orbit around the Sun is about 23.5 degrees, a value that has remained surprisingly constant over geological timescales. Without the protective hand of the Moon, however, this fundamental constant would be no certainty. Science paints a picture in which the Earth's axis would be subject to uncontrolled oscillations over millions of years, tumbling between extreme angles of inclination. Imagine a world where the axis were nearly 0 degrees. The polar regions would then receive hardly any direct sunlight, while the equator bathed in gleaming light all year round, a state without the familiar seasonal rhythms. Another equally dramatic possibility would be a tilt of up to 90 degrees, which would bring extreme polar days and polar nights, in which one hemisphere remained in icy darkness for months while the other was incessantly shone upon by the sun. Such drastic and, above all, rapid climate changes would put the environment in a constant phase of upheaval, a scenario that would make the development and adaptation of complex life to the conditions on Earth extremely difficult or even impossible. It is this unique celestial mechanics that makes the Moon an indispensable actor in the drama of life. It acts as a cosmic counterweight, a powerful anchor that keeps the Earth's axial tilt within a relatively narrow and thus stable range over long periods. This constant obliquity ensures that seasonal changes on Earth remain within moderate limits. The sun's heat can thus be distributed more evenly, which promotes the formation of stable ecosystems across the entire globe. This climate, constant over millions of years, created the necessary conditions for the emergence of plants, the first simple organisms that developed into more complex life forms, animals, and ultimately as humans. The existence of the Moon is thus inextricably interwoven with the history of our evolution. Observing other planets in our solar system emphasizes the special role of our satellite forcefully. Mars, for example, which has only 2 small, captured asteroids as moons, Phobos and Deimos, exhibits a much more chaotic obliquity. Its axial tilt can fluctuate dramatically over astronomical timescales, leading to far more extreme and unpredictable climatic conditions on its surface. This realization deepens our appreciation for the silent service the Moon renders to our world. While the Earth's axis is not absolutely rigid, it is subject to long-term, cyclical changes known as Milankovitch cycles, caused by the gravitational forces of the Moon and other planets. These cycles, acting over tens of thousands of years, in turn influence global climate patterns and are associated with the coming and going of ice ages. But even these natural fluctuations happen within a stable corridor guaranteed solely by the presence of our large moon. We look up at the moon and see not just a luminous firmament, a guide in the night, or the origin of the tides. We recognize in it rather a fundamental architect of our planet, a tireless builder of stability. It is the silent protector that, from the cosmos, creates and maintains the conditions that make our life here on Earth possible in the first place. The conditions for thriving forests, rushing rivers, the unfolding of countless species. All this we also owe to this heavenly guardian whose invisible power keeps our world in balance. Without it, the Earth would be a different, more inhospitable place, and life as we know it might never have been able to emerge. Chapter 5. The Unexplained Mysteries of the Moon. Despite all our missions and data, the Moon preserves an abundance of puzzles that stubbornly defy any explanation. Old NASA files, forgotten radio conversations of the Apollo astronauts, photos with strange geometric shapes on the lunar surface. They all tell stories that raise more questions than they answer. The Moon we think we know so well has a deeper, more mysterious side, one that fascinates researchers and dreamers alike. Do you remember April of the year 1970, when an explosion on board on the way to the Moon destroyed the Moon landing and 3 astronauts fought for their lives? It was Jack Swigert who radioed the words that went down in history. "Houston, we've had a problem." The world held its breath while the crew used the lunar module as a life pod and returned safely to Earth after 4 anxious days. Subsequently, the no longer needed ascent stage of their lunar module, a metallic colossus that had fulfilled its task, was steered in a controlled manner onto the surface of our satellite. A planned impact that was to bring to light unexpected findings. The highly sensitive seismometers already placed on the Moon, designed specifically to explore the internal structure of the celestial body, registered a reaction that deeply astonished the scientists on Earth. Instead of a short, muffled impact, the Moon vibrated like a huge bell, and this aftershock lasted not just minutes, but almost a full hour. A phenomenon that NASA scientist Dr. Maurice Ewing described with the words, "It's as if someone had struck a giant bell." These seismic data, obtained through selenological seismics, suggested that the Moon must have an unusually homogeneous internal structure, perhaps even being partially hollow, a hypothesis that still slumbers in the annals of science and has not been fully refuted. In addition, there is another anomaly that seems to support this idea. For its considerable size, the Moon is surprisingly light. Its core appears tiny in relation to the total volume, which is further supported by the existence of mascons, the so-called mass concentrations under the Maria regions. These mascons are areas of higher density that once significantly disturbed the orbits of early probes and bear witness to an unusual density distribution. However, a single, comprehensive explanation that logically and consistently unites all these observations is still a long time coming. In the circles of those who deal with the hidden facets of the Moon, the name Richard C. Hoagland keeps appearing. A former consultant to NASA who has worked meticulously for decades through original photos and records of the space agency. His conclusion is as bold as it is fascinating. Hoagland claims to have discovered huge, glass-like structures and geometric shapes in these high-resolution images, which he interprets as remains of a long-gone, highly developed civilization. Official science usually counters such interpretations by pointing to pareidolia, a well-known psychological phenomenon in which our brain tries to recognize familiar shapes or meanings in random patterns, such as faces in clouds or animals in rock formations. And undoubtedly, pareidolia explains many of these supposed observations. But the question of whether it can really completely demystify all anomalous structures on lunar images remains and continues to fuel the discussion. Anyone who wants to dive deeper into Hoagland's theories will find plenty of food for thought in his book Dark Mission: The Secret History of NASA. Another inconsistency that feeds the speculation concerns the sudden and inexplicable end of the Apollo missions. After Apollo 17 visited the Moon as the last manned mission in 1972, the already planned and funded missions Apollo 18, 19, and 20 were abruptly canceled. The official justification was budget cuts, an explanation that many still find insufficient today. Was it really just the money, or were there other reasons that stopped the continuation of the moon landings? There are stories from the astronauts themselves that deepen the mystery. Buzz Aldrin, the second person on the moon, reported strange light phenomena during the journey to the moon. And Edgar Mitchell, pilot of the lunar module of Apollo 14, spoke openly in later years about things he could not explain during his mission and that went beyond our current understanding. Such personal reports do not, of course, prove anything concrete in themselves about an extraterrestrial presence or a hidden history of the moon. But they serve as quiet reminders that our faithful heavenly companion may not have shared all its deepest secrets with us yet. It floats above us, a master of illusion, enchanting us with its familiar side, while carefully keeping its unknown facets in the darkness of its eternal rotation. And so the moon remains, despite all our research, a place of wonder and unsolved questions, a silent witness to possibilities that challenge our imagination to this day. Chapter 6: Apollo: What the Astronauts Really Experienced. The memories of July 20th, 1969, when Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto the moon, are firmly anchored in our collective memory. The images of triumph, the waving flag, the footprint, the unreal silence, became global symbols of human achievement. But behind these public scenes were moments that were more mysterious and less well known. Even during the precise approach of Apollo 11, the astronauts radioed Earth about an unknown object. It seemed to accompany them over a longer period, a silent witness to their historic journey. NASA later explained the incident as a detached rocket panel, but Buzz Aldrin confirmed the observation years later in interviews, leaving open whether the official explanation had ever completely convinced him. This was the beginning of a series of mysterious encounters and observations that the astronauts spoke about only rarely and incompletely over the years. Even more haunting was the event during the Apollo 10 mission, the crucial dress rehearsal before the moon landing. When the capsules orbited the moon and disappeared behind its far side for an hour, out of any radio contact with Earth, the three astronauts heard strange, almost music-like tones. These inexplicable sounds accompanied them for a full hour. The transcripts of these radio conversations, which NASA kept under lock and key for over 4 decades, were only fully made available to the public in 2008, available in the NASA Technical Reports server. In them, one can read how the astronauts discussed their bewilderment and the concern about whether they should report this phenomenon, for fear of being considered insane. A rational explanation favored by NASA speaks of electromagnetic interference between the radio systems of the lunar and command modules. While this hypothesis is plausible, it has never been conclusively proven. The mysterious space music remains a fascinating relic. Edgar Mitchell, astronaut of Apollo 14, spoke more freely about his convictions in later years. He was deeply convinced that humanity is not alone and that the moon hides secrets that were not intended for the public. He provided no proof, but these were the words of a man who had been there himself. December 1972 marked another turning point when Harrison Schmitt and Eugene Cernan left the moon as the last humans. As they ascended to the lunar module, Cernan said softly, almost like a promise, "We shall return." But they did not return. No one returned. Missions Apollo 18, 19, and 20 were planned, funded, the rockets were ready. And yet the program was discontinued almost overnight. NASA's official justification was always the budget, an explanation that remains unsatisfactory for many today. The last Saturn V rockets, these gigantic wonders, were not scrapped but mothballed. They stand today as silent, majestic witnesses to a bygone era in museums, colossal sculptures of an ended ambition. No astronaut who ever set foot on the moon spoke really openly about what awaited him there, what impressions went so deep that they did not fit into the official reports. It seems as if the moon, in its silent grandeur, beyond our triumphant images, has kept its most mysterious stories to itself or entrusted them only to those who truly touched it. Stories that faded in the silence of space, but lived on in the hearts of those who sought the unknown and perhaps found it. And so the moon remains a place of continuous wonder, a silent guardian over untold truths. Chapter 7. The Moon of the Future, Return and Resources. After a long, silent phase in which humanity directed its gaze toward distant planets and the secrets of the deep universe, it is now returning to its oldest companion with a completely new determination and visionary goals, the moon. It is as if an old promise were being revitalized, an unwritten pact between Earth and sky that is now to be fulfilled. NASA's ambitious Artemis program, a lighthouse of international cooperation, marks the beginning of an era that points far beyond the fleeting visits of the past. A time when the moon is not just a temporary destination, but a place of permanent presence. Research stations rise like modern outposts. The first tentative steps of an extraterrestrial colony are made. A new chapter in human history, characterized by continuous exploration and the irrepressible urge for discovery. A turning point that makes this return not only desirable, but also feasible, is the groundbreaking discovery of water ice. Hidden in the eternal shadows of craters at the lunar poles, where sunlight never reaches, this precious resource slumbers. These so-called permafrost craters have preserved the frozen water like in a natural vault for billions of years. This ice is a truly invaluable source that can provide far more than just drinking water for the astronauts living there and breathing air for their facilities. It holds the potential to be split into its components hydrogen and oxygen through electrolysis, the essential components for rocket fuel. The moon could thus transform from a destination into a cosmic gas station, an indispensable springboard for future, even more ambitious journeys to Mars and the still unexplored reaches of our solar system. This vision, based on the principle of in situ resource utilization, ISRU, that is, using local resources to support space missions, fundamentally changes the entire strategic planning of space research and opens up unimagined possibilities. But it is not just the icy deposits at the poles that make the moon so irresistible. Its barren surface harbors another treasure that occurs on Earth only in vanishingly small quantities, helium-3. This rare isotope, a product of the solar wind that hits the top layer of the moon undisturbed, is considered a potential fuel for future fusion reactors. Even if the technological maturity for large-scale extraction and use is still in the stars, the thought of a clean, virtually inexhaustible energy source that could radically solve the problems of our planetary energy supply is of immense attraction. The moon could thus not only be a laboratory for scientific discoveries, but also a source that fundamentally revolutionizes our research and our global energy infrastructure. It is a treasure chamber that has still not fully revealed its secrets, a wealth of potential just waiting to be decoded and tapped by us, while the planned Lunar Gateway, a space station in lunar orbit, will serve as a central hub for these forward-looking ventures. A first concrete sign of this return was provided by the Artemis II mission in April 2026, the first manned lunar flyby since Apollo 17 in 1972, after a break of over 50 years. 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and the Canadian Jeremy Hansen, flew around the moon in just under 9 days without landing. Koch was the first woman, Glover the first African American, and Hansen the first non-American to see the moon so closely. No landing attempt, no big spectacle, but a clear signal. Humanity is back on the path. Chapter 8. The Silent Farewell, the Distant Future of the Moon. If one considers the incessant work of cosmic forces, a truth is revealed that is both sublime and profoundly melancholic. Everything in the universe, even the most majestic celestial bodies, dances an unstoppable dance of change whose melody sounds over millions of years. We have followed the dramatic emergence of our moon, understood its indispensable role in shaping the early Earth, and seen humanity's bold visions for its future exploration and use. But in this infinite narrative, there is also a final chapter, an end hidden in the unfathomable depths of cosmic time. The tidal forces, those invisible but powerful threads that once lashed the primordial seas and slowed the Earth's rotation, will continue their effect over eons. They are the silent sculptors of the cosmos, slowly pushing the moon, centimeter by centimeter, away from our planet. It is a farewell in such slow motion, a drifting apart of immense proportions that almost breaks our human conception of time and eternity. Every year, with the precision of a cosmic clockwork, the moon moves about 3.8 centimeters away from the Earth. At first glance, this distance may seem trivial, little more than the width of a thumb. But over the unimaginable periods of billions of years, this tiny increase adds up to a massive distance. This is a direct consequence of the principle of conservation of angular momentum in the Earth-Moon system. While tidal friction continuously slows the Earth's rotation and thus dissipates energy, this angular momentum must be compensated elsewhere, and it flows into the moon's orbital energy, pushing it into a higher orbit. At some point in the immeasurably distant future, the moon will be so far away from us that its apparent size in the terrestrial sky will shrink noticeably. The familiar and sublime spectacle of total solar eclipses, in which the moon perfectly and completely covers the solar disk, will then be a thing of the past. The celestial ballet that our ancestors marveled at with awe and that still fascinates us today will dissolve. In its place, only partial or annular eclipses will occur, a subtle but irrevocable change in celestial mechanics that reminds us of the transience of even the most monumental phenomena. But what happens at the end of this cosmic dance, when orbital evolution has completed its final steps? Scientists whose gaze reaches far beyond the human timeline have developed various long-term scenarios. One possible fate says that the moon will eventually escape so far from the Earth that it is no longer bound to its gravitational field. Then it would start its own orbit around the sun as an independent, icy planetoid, a lonely wanderer in interplanetary space. Another, albeit less likely theory, which would only become relevant in many billions of years, imagines that the Earth's rotation could slow down further and the tidal conditions could change so that the moon is brought closer to the Earth again in a very, very distant future. Should this happen and the moon fall below a critical distance, known as the Roche limit, the Earth's tidal forces would mercilessly tear it apart. Its fragments would then form a spectacular but short-lived ring around our planet, similar to the rings of Saturn. But until these distant eternities, unimaginably many billions of years will pass, epochs in which stars are born and die, galaxies collide, and life on Earth will change countless times. The moon will still stand by our side as a silent companion for an infinitely long time until then, a silent witness to the ebb and flow of life on Earth. Outro. The moon is much more than just a glowing circle in the star-studded night sky. It is a silent, cosmic builder whose gravitational force shaped our planet and whose presence is a guardian of life on Earth. It acts as an eternal mirror of our own history, our longings, and our dreams that we have projected onto its face since the beginning of time. Its calm and steady presence reminds us of the deep, often hidden forces of the universe and reveals to us the beauty of the delicate balance that made the emergence and continued existence of life on Earth possible in the first place. Now that this extensive journey through the secrets of the moon is coming to an end, I invite you to take all these deep impressions with you into your night. Let the soothing thoughts of our steady companion glide you very easily into sleep. Feel a gentle calm spreading within you as you imagine the moon watching over you, always present, while you sink deeper into the world of dreams. May its reliable, protective energy grant you a truly restful night.
That was today's night lesson. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Good night and sleep well.